Okay, I think since we're at about 5 after 12 here, I think we'll go ahead and get started if that's all right with all of you. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Nicole Watson and I am the director of the Catherine G. Murphy Gallery. On behalf of the gallery, as well as the Department of Art and Art History here at St. Kate's, I'm very pleased to welcome you to today's talk by Nuss Oehlke and Sydney Ockenga. Autumn and Sydney will be discussing the work on view and their senior juried exhibition titled Journey, Body Guiding Soul. I'd like to begin today's event by recognizing that St. Catherine University is located on the sacred land of the Dakota people. The Sisseton and Wahpeton bands were forcibly removed from this area by white settlers. The Dakota people continue to live and love here in Minnesota Makoche, the land where the waters reflect the clouds. This land acknowledgement is not a form of reparations, but is offered so that we may better understand our university community's role in and responsibility for the history of this place, and the ways this institution continues to benefit from settler colonialism. Though we are all joining today's event from different locations, I ask that we take a moment to consider and honor the land we inhabit. Thank you. Before we begin, I just have a few housekeeping items and some information about the format of today's artist talk. So each artist will talk for about 5 to 10 minutes, and we will share images of their work while they talk. We kindly ask that you keep your microphones muted while the artists are speaking. The artists will take audience questions after both of their presentations are done. So if you have questions along the way, I invite you to just kind of jot them down, and then we'll invite you to ask those questions towards the end. The event is being recorded, which you probably discovered when you logged in, and will be posted on the gallery's website in about a week or two. And we'll put a link to the full exhibition, which is online. We'll put that into the chat for you, and we'll do that right now in case you want to take a look at that during the event or later. And then finally, I just want to take a couple of minutes to tell you a little bit about our work with these student artists this semester. My colleague, Monica Rudquist, and I have had the honor of working with Sydney and Autumn this semester in a course called Senior Seminar and Exhibition. And as part of this course, we asked the students to conceptualize and create a new body of work that reveals, or a new body of work, and we call this new body of work the Senior Project. So we talked to Sydney and Autumn about this at the very beginning of the semester. And we challenged the students to make work that reveal the themes, ideas, or questions that are important to them right now. We also asked them to consider how the breadth and depth of their liberal arts education impacts their art practice. In other words, how does their work give them another way of knowing something? I think what you will learn today is that Sydney and Autumn were very successful in their senior projects. They have made thoughtful, engaging, and sophisticated work in a pandemic from home. And they were also really mindful of one another and the ways their separate works could interact. This resulted in a strong and wonderfully cohesive senior exhibition, and we're just really proud of these students. So I'm going to turn things over to Monica now, who will introduce you to each student before they speak. And I just want to thank you all again for joining us today.
Thank you, Nicole, and welcome to everyone. I am pleased to, I'm a little bit nervous here, and I don't know why, but because this is an important day for everyone involved. But I'm pleased to introduce studio art and art history major, Sydney Ockenga. The following bio has been written by the artist. Sydney is a St. Paul artist and student originally from Egan, a small town in South Dakota. Sydney will graduate from St. Catherine University in May, later this month, 2021, with a BA in both studio art and art history. They create art as an outlet for reflecting on their life's experience and to make connections to feelings that arise through storytelling. Growing up in and around the tribal lands of the Lower Sioux Nation in the Flandreau Santee tribe of which their families are members, Sydney has always had a curiosity for exploring stories in the ways they appear in the world and in nature. Taking in the stories of the people and places around them, Sydney saw how their own life story and experiences contributed to those around them, and in return, they saw the reflection of community. Hearing the stories of family members and friends and exploring the relationship between people and their stories is where Sydney finds the inspiration to create art. When Sydney started attending St. Kate's, they saw an opportunity to share their experiences and explore the nature of decolonization with a new community. Inspired by Waziatuan's text, What Does Justice Look Like?, Sydney created the Truth-Telling Forums. Encouraged by E. Tuck and K.W. Yang's question, what does decolonization ask of us? Posed in their essay, Decolonization is Not a Metaphor, Sydney used the forums to bring people together, to bring together people in and around the St. Catherine University Art and Art History Department, to create a community dedicated to thinking critically about the ways we teach and create art. These forums encouraged the community to engage with art through a decolonized mindset, to be more mindful of Indigenous people while calling for more truthful conversations about the violent history of the United States and the land it now occupies, which was obtained through genocide and cultural erasure. It was in these forums and in conversations around the St. Kate's community that Sydney saw the power and energy that a communal drive for social justice can have, and decided that it was the same energy they wanted to express in their art. Sydney's work within the Art and Art History Department on projects like the Truth-Telling Forums and their toolkit for decolonization earned them the Amy Sears Memorial Scholarship for both the 2019-2020 and 2020-21 academic years. Please join me in welcoming Sydney Ockenga.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for sharing the screen as well, Nicole. Like Monica said, my name is Sydney Ockenga. I come from Egan, South Dakota, very, very small town. And I concentrate my paintings in more watercolors and gouache. Actually, I've transitioned to a lot of gouache lately. And I want to start by kind of introing my work, and then I'll follow up with some more elaboration on my process of storytelling that I mentioned in my bio. If you want to start with the first slide, Nicole. So the first body of work I'm introing is my installation that is dedicated to my grandpa. Buzz is what everyone calls him. The 4 pieces surrounding the portrait of Grandpa Buzz I titled Road Trip with Grandpa Buzz. These are all objects I associate kind of with my grandpa, relating to the story of a road trip we both took together. And I kind of doubled this series as a sort of pseudo self-portrait, kind of to reflect the way that I see myself in my grandpa, and specifically in experiences I have with him. To kind of run through the story, my grandpa's like a horrid chain smoker. Literally, that I could smell. I could have like the scent of that core memory of Seneca's like stuck in my head. So that's that first red panel, and then moves on to the blue one with the tire. We actually hit a flat tire in Memphis and like delayed our trip by like 4 hours. The next one with the rearview mirror, he always has like a bolo tie or something hanging on his very traditional indigenous man. Always has something beaded or something hanging from his or in and around his car. And the last one, the frame of Waffle House, because this whole trip he talked about how he was going to take me for my first time at Waffle House. And eventually we found one like in the last leg of our trip, and he complained the whole time about the food. Very in character for my grandpa Buzz. And then I kind of just wanted to dedicate that with a portrait of him. We don't really take a lot of pictures together, so I wanted to memorialize him in some sort of way. So this will eventually be a gift that I got to make. It was a very personal experience making this. And especially because I was looking at it not only from an artistic sense of making it, but also as how do I want people to see my grandpa the way I see him. And in that way, it's all smiley. If you want to move to the next one, Nicole. My next body work, it was dedicated to my dad. The middle painting I have titled Floating By. Canoeing is a really strong core memory I also have with my dad. It was one of basically our like biggest activity we did together. I grew up living right on the river. It's called the Big Sioux, very small river to go along with our very small town. But I would remember like getting texts randomly throughout the day being like, I'm going to go put the canoe in. Do you want to come? And I would drop like everything and be like, absolutely, let's go. This is another kind of portrait that I took not only from my perspective, but from other people based on the photos I took. These are actually old family photos. My parents used to be obsessed with disposables. So these are all disposable camera images that I kind of stole from home to recreate and to put a little bit of myself in them, because as you can see in these pictures, I was too young to really have any input on the pictures themselves. But I recreated them with gouache and watercolors and included some text and conversation like snippets I've had with my dad before. A lot of them really funny. I tried to keep it really light. In my image of my dad is very funny. I even like post when he passed, like all of my core memories of him are joyful. I never wanted to look back and feel kind of mournful, because I know he would be somewhere making fun of me if I stayed if I didn't remember all like the good times we had. So they include snippets like this bottom one. Was when I was sick one day from school, and he offered me some medicine that he had in his room, but the only thing he had in there was Pepto-Bismol that was expired like 4 years. So obviously that was not going to help. And then the top one was a conversation he had texted me out of the blue, no warning, complaining about how they killed off Wolverine, and he was devastated. So this is, how I see my dad, kind of both through myself and other people taking pictures of him. All the pictures were either taken by my mom or their friends growing up. If you want to go to the next one, Nicole. These 3 bodies of work are more explicitly self-portraits that I did. The first one on the far left, Disconnected, is one that I made pretty soon after my dad's funeral, actually. It was one of the first kind of assignments I did coming back to school after it. And that's kind of, you can see on the top one, the lilac becomes like a heavy influence now. That was my dad's like favorite plant. He really loved the smell of lilacs. We always bought lilac candles, even though we had lilac bushes outside. We had to have double the lilac. But it was a piece of art I made kind of reflecting myself in the way that like I felt like, not post morning, but like in the middle of morning, you do feel this like disconnect between what you are remembering about a person and then also like how you are connecting to your own body. And I wanted to, reflect that in some way, obviously going back to the water motif. And this is a piece that it's actually really large. So making it, I felt like it was like a full body experience because of how big it was. And the middle one, I titled Lilac Rain, a little bit of a Prince reference. That one's for my mom. Very big Prince fan. But this one I made in 2020, right? Not at the beginning of the pandemic, but pretty soon into like the transition of doing studio work online. And it was like a weird, I don't know if everyone else had this feeling, but that weird kind of like you're reconnecting with yourself because you're kind of stuck with yourself at home. And I kind of flowed into this more not necessarily flat, but this kind of glassy. I started sticking with this stained glass motif. There's still the pattern of lilacs in the stained glass. And I gave myself a little crown as like a last minute decision because I was really kind of down on myself. And I was like, I don't know why I'm not holding myself in a higher light because I am my biggest fan. I think it was like making this painting, I decided, I know what's best for me, and then I'm gonna kind of reflect that in myself to make myself feel a little bit better about being in the pandemic and also being someone, like post-grieving and all that. And the last one I made fairly recently with the intention of including it with these two other pieces. I titled it Body Resting. Went immediately back to that stained glass motif. I wanted to make it feel like there were layers to it, as that's why I kind of introduced the window with the additional of the foliage behind to make it look like you are either looking outward or inward at maybe yourself or another person, to reflect that idea of storytelling. And are we interacting with someone in our community, or are we looking in and seeing that reflection on ourselves? And to kind of talk a little bit more about storytelling, though that kind of made my own segue. But my goals with all three of these pieces actually were to explore the stories of the people I was talking about, the people being myself, my dad, and my grandpa. With myself as the position of the storyteller, you are seeing through these works, you're seeing my grandpa through my stories, or my dad through my experience and my stories. And you're also seeing myself through the stories I'm trying to tell with them. You're maybe not seeing myself like as I am face value as a person, but you're seeing it through the stories I'm choosing to tell you about myself. So I think stories themselves are a result of the person or the subject that they're about, and what they look like to the storyteller you're hearing it from. So exploring that relationship between storyteller and subject was something I wanted to interrogate with this work. I'm, constantly inspired by my community. My relatives, my family are some of my biggest supporters. Shout out my mom again. But, everything they've shown me and taught me through the years, either growing up at home and then me moving away, was my main inspiration for this. Going through the processes of making this work, I kind of just was asking myself, how do we tell stories? And through the stories, what are we choosing to remember about people or subjects? That idea of being able to choose how we remember people or how we remember things always fascinated me. I think it shows the power that storytellers have and the way that they have the ability to change narratives based on what they're willing to tell and how people are willing to listen. And those are just some of the questions I had going into this line of work. I would love to hear anyone else's questions at the end, but that's a little about me and my work.
Thank you, Sydney. And as Sydney said, we'll please hold your questions for them until after after Autumn has shared their work. So now I am pleased to introduce studio art major Autumn Nuss Oehlke, whose bio I will be reading right now. So Autumn is a multimedia artist with particular interest in digital design and painting. They will graduate from St. Catherine University in May of 2021 with a BA in studio art. They previously received a BA in American Sign Language in 2018. Weaving narratives of the winsome and woesome has been a lifelong pastime of theirs. Having been born in and moved around all Minnesota, Autumn is wanderlusting at their chance to relocate to the Pacific Northwest during the summer of 2021, where they will pursue a tattoo apprenticeship at Garland Tattoo and Piercing. Their two-person exhibition, Journey Body Guiding Soul, is a dream realized. Please join me in welcoming Autumn Nuss Oehlke.
Thank you, Monica. So glad that all of you are here today. Let me go ahead and adjust my screen quick. Okay. Yeah, so thanks for being here. A little bit of background on myself. Like Monica mentioned in my bio, I've lived in Minnesota my whole life. I grew up here and I've moved all around. I think I've moved about 15 times, so it's been kind of a wild ride. I've lived in really small towns, like of 1,000 people, and I've also lived in Minneapolis, so a lot of variety there. And with that, I have witnessed a lot of change and a lot of myself having to adapt to all these different situations, be them positive or, a lot of the time a little bit chaotic. And that's something that really inspires me, not only in myself, but I love looking at other people and their stories of not even necessarily moving events, but just events that change them and the way that they perceive those events and the way that they move forward from those events. A big thing for me making my work is having the ability to reflect back on experiences and continue to evolve from those. So I want to talk a little bit about my process. I like to do a lot of single word journaling. So I'll get an idea or I'll be inspired by something and I'll kind of just start jotting down singular words and kind of make a little breadcrumb trail for myself in a way. And then that's where I kind of get the majority of my planning stages from. As you can see here up on this slide, I've got plucking weightlessness, and that's kind of, I wanted to use it as an example for the next step in my process, which is I really like working with a lot of different mediums. I really enjoy digital work, painting, sculpture, all of it. So I take a lot of time to try and think about how I want to project, my vision into these pieces and how my audience will view them and how the material I use impacts that. So for plucking weightlessness, I really wanted something that was physical and that could be like literally usable. So yeah, and then I just go about that same process with all my work. Nicole, if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So yeah, just a little bit about the inspiration that I had for my senior project. We are living in a time where death is kind of all around us, right? We're going through this global pandemic. If we haven't experienced death firsthand ourselves, we definitely have been hearing about it. We're also, living in a time where Dante Wright, his murder by cops had just happened again. So that's another scary thing that's going on. And because of that, I think a lot of people view death itself and the concept of death is a really negative topic, specifically here in Western culture. I find, growing up in it, that was definitely the case. But the irony of all of it is that none of us are gonna like end our journey here in this lifetime without having to face that, like facing our own deaths and then also those of those we love. So I think it doesn't have to be that way. I think we can learn to be death positive and shift our perspectives a little bit on it. And I think by doing that, it would uplift us all and allow us to more fully live the lives that we have. And as you can see in this slide, I really chose to use color in a pointed way. So there's a lot of black and white within my work because I think people really tend to think of death as kind of like a black and white negative topic, but I wanted to introduce a lot of brighter colors, like you can see in the portraiture aspect of Innocent there. Because I think, like I said, I think it can be positive if we shift our perspectives a bit. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Nicole. Thanks. So yeah, and I know that this is a hard topic for people to, work through and think about. And that's obviously very much impacted by our own perspectives, the way that we've grown up hearing about it, our own personal interpretations, culture, religion, all of that has a lot of impact on the way that we view death and the journey of our souls. So I really wanted to leave a lot of room up for interpretation, which is why I chose to use a lot of sort of fantastical elements in this world situation that I have created. As you can see in Deliverance, it's very colorful and very much open to my audience adding elements and characters and other storylines that they might see coming into play. And that's just really important for me. And I hope that everyone can take the time to kind of chew on it a bit and hopefully, get some good out of it. So also, I just wanted to leave you guys with a couple of resources. Caitlin Doty is a really great death positive resource. She is a mortician who is, very much for death positive funerals and all of that. She also has a really popular YouTube channel with a lot of really great content on there. So I'll go ahead and leave a link in the chat with her website so you guys can check her out. She's also a really great author. I definitely recommend her books. And I also wanted to leave you guys with a link for the Collective for Radical Death Studies. It's a website that just has a lot of really great cumulative resources, blogs, all that sort of stuff. On a lot of really important topics. They have different sections for women in death, queer death, the capitalization and colonization of death here in Western practices. So yeah, I will drop both of those in the chat, but thank you.
Thank you, Autumn, and thank you, Sydney. Those were both wonderful presentations, and we really appreciate the slideshow too. That was just terrific. We can open it up to audience questions now, so feel free if you have a question and you'd like to unmute yourself and ask, go right ahead. You can also raise a hand, and happy to call on people that way too. And if the chat is more comfortable, that's a great place to leave your questions as well. Keep an eye on that. Any questions for Sydney and Autumn or Autumn? Well, I'll go ahead and start with one. because I always have one in my back pocket. I'm wondering if the artist, I know a little bit about this because I've worked with them a little bit around this, but I think that would be great to hear about it in their own words. But do you want to talk a little bit about how you see your work fitting together? Because I alluded to this a little bit in my introduction, and we've talked about this too, but the audience doesn't have the benefit of seeing that you did install a physical show here in the Visual Arts Building. So even though the building isn't open, we thought it was really important for the students to have the experience of installing their work. And normally, especially with a student show, we divide the work by person because usually the work is really disparate. But we saw a lot of overlap in the themes that the artists were using for their senior projects. And so for the first time since I've been here, we actually laid out the show. We were able to lay out the show in a way that where the artists were not very separated. There were areas of overlap, and we could hang works together that that seemed to really work really well together. And that felt a little unusual. So I'm wondering, Sydney and Autumn, if you want to talk, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, did you know that about each other's work going into this process, or was that more of a happy accident?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit first. I guess I can't speak for both of us, but I had no clue. I think I had taken a couple classes with Autumn before, so we weren't like strangers or anything by all means. And I was always like kind of like a quiet fan in the corner because I think Autumn's amazing at like digital art and I am not. So like I was always just like, oh, amazing, all of their things are so incredible, like from the sideline. So coming into this show and realizing it was just us two together, I was like, oh, I hope, like we can like come up with an idea together. But I think it was the first meeting that we had together with you, Nicole, and Monica, and we kind of talked it over and we both went, oh, we have the same idea. Like we were like, oh, our themes are literally exactly the same. Like it was just like a complete coincidence, like sort of like uncanny in how like serendipitous it was.
Yeah, definitely like the happiest of accidents, I would say. It really, really worked out well. I think, just the fact that we both really wanted to focus in on, storytelling aspects and also grief in a big way really, really helped us bring everything together. And I was also, in fact, kind of like, oh, Sydney's so amazing at painting. What am I going to do? She has like all these amazing things. So also low-key fan. So it worked out.
Yeah, I'm noticing, I think while I was asking my question that Amanda says in the chat that the artists realize they mirror each other in the driving paintings of the car. I think it's interesting how they mirror on similar topics. So I think Amanda was picking up on some of that too. And I did not even make that visual connection between the work Pick Me Up, Autumn's work Pick Me Up, and Sydney, the rearview mirror detail of, your Grandpa Buzz tribute. So that's really wonderful. Marjorie Fedison in the chat says, how did you land on the title of the exhibition, Journey, Body Guiding Soul? Great question.
Yeah.
I was just trying to remember that the other day. It feels like one of those details of the show that kind of happened so quickly and easily that I like didn't think too much of it. But I think from what I remember, we were kind of, workshopping like buzzwords that we were seeing in our work. And I think we like adjourned for the day and then came back with ideas. And we had both been using the words like body and soul and like similar like synonyms of journey, and kind of just piece them together. Correct me if I'm remembering anything different, Autumn.
No, you are totally right. It just worked out like super easy. I think we maybe had like body and soul switched or something. And then we were like, well, that's easy. Let's just go with that. It's perfect.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, it was at the beginning in that first day or two when we were working on a jam board, right? And brainstorming things. And it was really amazing how, the two of them would be kind of writing on different sides of the jam board, really reflecting. I was watching this and I was like, are they seeing each other? Are they reading each other's minds already? Yeah, it really kind of gelled very quickly. So it was great to see.
Just a comment from Carol that says, I really enjoyed both of your presentations. I feel like you see further collaborations in the future. So something to think about, Autumn and Sydney.
And you've kind of got this, virtual thing down, so you'll be able to continue that even when Autumn is across the country.
Indeed.
Yeah, I can speak to a little bit on, I feel like I should talk about our experience putting in the show together. I feel like that, like the energy in the studio every time we both came in, like it was so weird, like just how like easygoing this was. Like we keep saying that, but it's like I was so nervous coming into like the installation part of being like, oh, like we're either just gonna have like different ideas of what to do, but it felt like we both like struggled with the same things. We both like were better at like the same things, or we're like Autumn was better at one thing, like really deep dive into it. Autumn like leveled all of the vinyl for me because I could not do it to save my life. But also I would like Matt and hold everything down for Autumn too. There was a lot of cohesion, which I think was really important in like studio experience, especially since neither of us have gotten that experience since COVID has happened and kind of shut down all studio life. And it was just like a really good time, which I feel like when you're separated from people for so long, it's so refreshing to be able to be like, oh, I'm going to go into the studio today.
Yeah, I definitely felt that too. It was super nice to just like be able to work with someone that I connected with so easily. It was like just like all of a sudden gaining a friend after not having been out of the house for like a year. It was pretty awesome.
I think it's worth pointing out to both of you, I don't know if you know this, but that doesn't always work that way with student shows. And so the fact that you were intentional about seeking out that kind of community with one another, I think says a lot about your practice as artists, and that your ability to make that connection and help each other in that way is a really important part of this process. And I'm just so, I feel so good that you got to have that, especially during this year when we've been doing most of our work like this, right, over a screen. So I give you both a lot of credit for that. Here's another question in the chat from Amy. She says, I've got two questions, if I may. One, who are the artists that inspire you and why? And the second question is, I recently listened to an interview with the poet Nikki Finney, I think I'm pronouncing their name correctly, who is interested in thinking about form as content. There is so much powerful and resonant content in both of your bodies of work. I wonder how you think about content as informed by the forms and even the materials you've chosen.
For that first question, I feel like, artists that come to mind, my focus, as mentioned before, is in a lot of like Indigenous artists. So artists like Oscar Howe was a big one for me very early on, like in high school. And, like more contemporary artists today, like Deani Whitehawk and Marlena Miles, especially like in their storytelling, the way they both do storytelling very differently inspires me a lot. But also I'm someone who loves like pop culture, specifically like album covers, like specifically just like CD album covers are so influential to me personally. but either between my dad's like huge CD collection he used to have. Like I have some album covers just like ingrained in my memory, and the way that those are able to like accurately represent the music then that's going to be on the CD or you listen to is kind of where I take a lot of my inspiration, and that idea of being able to, you know, capture like hours of content into one image, or like one like storyline into one image, always kind of inspired me or not to like try to do that same thing. And as form as content, I really like that idea. When we think about, you know, art being like a source of power and like having the power to change the way we look at things. I feel like the content in my work is a lot more maybe organic than maybe I had thought about it at the start. A lot of times when I'm painting, it's very impulsive, so I'm not very mechanical in the way I work, like at home or like in my studio space. But I really like that. I guess I just really like that process. I can't really speak too much of it because it's so like impulsive, but I never feel like I am like making myself sit down and make content, or like that I'm forcing content to happen when it doesn't want to, if that answers any of that question.
I am also a little bit unsure of how to ask that question. I think it's something that I might sit with for a while. But I do think, you know, based off of what I had mentioned before, that I really try to specifically choose materials that I think will portray a certain, I guess, vibe, for better lack of a term. Um, so just the choice of kind of using a lot of the whole sorry, my plucking weightlessness pieces are all found object sculptures, and I just ended up painting them black entirely, or white in the case of the belt. But just the idea of having all of these, you know, various objects of different textures and materials and all of that, and combining them all together, and painting them one solid color, I think might speak to that a little bit. As far as artists that inspire me, I think I've always and forever will be inspired by my one of my childhood art teachers, Nancy Calhow. She's pretty great. She does a lot of impressionism, which I tend to love a lot. And also just a lot of tattooers in the community I'm pretty inspired by. Stabby Gabby, she works in Uptown Minneapolis. Definitely shout out to her. She does some amazing work that kind of falls in line with my interests, in that it's very cutesy, but it's also got darker themes to it sometimes. So yeah.
Thank you, Autumn and Sydney, and thanks, Amy, for that terrific question. I have another question in the chat for Sydney. This is from Jennifer. Sydney, I think you said you did not have a lot of photos with your grandpa. Is that something you purposefully avoided, or is it perhaps just a side effect of your lifestyles or your personalities? It certainly amplifies the importance and meaning behind your painted portraits of your grandpa.
I don't think it was something we personally avoided. It was actually something I even thought about while I was painting the portrait originally, because I was like looking through, you know, pictures of my grandpa to use, and like that would best represent him the way I see him. And I was just kind of like, oh, we don't have like picture of us really together. Whether it being from not spending time together, which we do all the time when I'm home. So I don't think it's that. But I feel like a lot of times when we are, you know, in similar spaces, we're conversing more than anything. Or I'd like to think maybe we're just so caught up in, you know, being able to be with each other that we don't like stop to be like, oh, we should document like our time together. but it's just maybe just a side effect. He's not a big like tech person, so even that is like a little bit iffy for him. Like he would, if he could, he'd still be listening to like cassettes. Like that's just kind of how Grandpa Buzz is. But yeah, he's definitely still someone like important, and that's why I wanted to highlight that in the painting. I mean, we share the same birthday. We I was my mom like purposely aligned the day I was born with his birthday. So that's just kind of a thing we share. I think we just naturally, have that connection. Thanks, Jennifer.
I have another question that I'm curious about. You both make work that deals with grief. Did you find that it was cathartic to make work about grief?
I could go first. I think it is in a way. I also kind of lost my mom at a pretty young age, and that had a really big impact on the way that I viewed death, especially at that time. It felt, if you didn't get already that I'm all about death positivity by now, it felt really, really, really negative to me at that point in my life, which is understandable. Um, but I think now having that happen and being able to look back on it, I find that it kind of empowers me even more to make that sort of content, just because I think that I'm really passionate about helping other people out and, going through their stories. So yeah, I think it's cathartic in a way. It's more now, so it's more uplifting for me. So
Yeah, it was similar. I mean, I think that's why one of the ways Autumn and I connected so well was over like that death positivity. For me, coming from, an Indigenous family, death is never the end to us. We always see it as, they're journeying to another part of their life. Like Native wakes are always like super long and more of like a celebration than anything. So I think having that, reflection of grief in these paintings, specifically with the installation to my dad, and then all of my self-portraits I've shown were post, his funeral and passing. So I feel like it was cathartic in the way that I finally got to, get it down like into like a physical object, even though they're like paintings. But it like his death didn't feel like something I had to get over, if that makes sense. Like I feel like grieving to people is always like, oh, time to get over it. But it never felt like that to me.
Thank you, both of you, for those just really thoughtful answers to my question. I really appreciate it. I think we have time for one more question, and I see one in the chat from Carol. This is for Autumn. Carol says, I'm curious about your tattoo practice. It seems to me that tattoos are all about storytelling. Do you have any thoughts about your approach in that medium?
it's a really great question. Yeah, it really is all about storytelling. And I think that is a big part of it that I was drawn to, is just about a lot of people really want tattoos that have meaning to them. Because your body's a canvas, right? Like you want things that are meaningful to you that you can look at and remember those stories or instances forever, essentially. But yeah, I think, yeah, it definitely does go together. But like I said, I'm really, really drawn to other people's stories. So just having that ability to kind of sit down and talk with clients and understand, their emotions and their feelings and all of that surrounding the stories that they have to tell, and help them to translate that into colors and line work and like various styles, is something that I am very, very excited to start doing. So yeah, thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Autumn. I know we're just kind of wrapping up here, and I thought that a nice way to close today would be to mention that both Sydney and Autumn are recipients of the 2021 Friends of the Gallery Award. And I know we have some friends on the call today, so that seems it's kind of a nice to be able to announce this here. The Friends of the Gallery are a group of alumni, neighbors, and friends who are committed to the visual arts at St. Kate's. And the group was established to provide annual financial support for gallery programming and the fine art collection, as well as to honor our student artists every year. And so every year, the Friends of the Gallery present an award to a graduating senior who is majoring in either studio art or art history or both, and who have shown exceptional work in their time at St. Kate's. And I'm just really pleased that this year we can offer 2 awards, and I think both Sydney and Autumn are very, very deserving of these awards. So Autumn's award is in recognition of outstanding work in studio art, and Sydney's award is in recognition of outstanding work in both studio art and art history. So please join me in congratulating both Autumn and Sydney on a fantastic, fantastic senior juried exhibition, as well as the Friends of the Gallery Award. We'll go ahead and wrap things up. Again, thank you all for coming today. I know this is a very busy time of year, especially for those of you who are in faculty here. We're just really grateful for your time, and grateful that we can celebrate the seniors this way. So unless anyone has any closing thoughts, thank you. Happy spring. Congratulations to Sydney and Autumn again.